I recently got a request from the folks at Bitgo Hobby to review one of the new Dynam packages they're calling the SRTF, or Smart Ready to Fly. Let's take a look. I've had pretty good luck with Dynam airplanes over the years and have many reviews on my RCPlaneviews.com channel. The folks at Bitgo offered one of their new Smart Ready to Fly models that are targeted at new RC pilots. I said sure, and before long, a new Dynam Primo SRTF was at my door. For those of you new to RC model flying, EPO foam models are very popular ways to enter the hobby. They come in several configurations. The base configuration comes with all the servos, the motor, and electronic speed control, or ESC. You have to use your own receiver, transmitter, battery, and charger. It's often referred to as a receiver-ready or plug-and-fly or plug-and-play. The next level up offered by most vendors is the ready-to-fly or RTF configuration. In this configuration, the plane comes with a basic transmitter and receiver, battery and charger, in addition to what's included in the basic plug-and-fly set. Dynam's new Smart Ready to Fly is similar to the normal Ready to Fly set, with the exception that it includes a smart receiver, the MSR66A. This receiver includes the normal receiver features together with a 6-axis stabilizer, which allows several flight modes that are beneficial to the beginner. With these switch selectable modes, you can fly the airplane without electronic support, with a gyro to support minor corrections on a windy day, and with an automatic recovery mode that will level your airplane if you lose control, assuming you have enough altitude. These flight modes can be really helpful for the new RC pilot. Whether a grade schooler heading out with mom or dad, or a recent empty nester who wants to return to the hobby now that he or she has more time without the kids in the house, these SRTF sets are a great way to get started. They are also a bit less expensive than some similar sized RTF model offerings on the market. This review has 3 sections. In the first section, we'll build the airplane and get it set up ready to fly. In part 2, we'll go flying and you'll get a chance to see the plane in action and see the various flight modes. In part 3, we'll take a look at a cool feature of the Gavin 6 transmitter that comes with the kit. That is, using it to control a flight simulator. By the way, if you find this video helpful, please click the thumbs up icon below and consider subscribing to the RC Planeviews channel. If you click on the bell icon, you'll get notified when I post new videos. So let's get started. So this is the retail packaging for the Dynam Primo Smart Ready to Fly. Let's take a look at what's inside. So this is the inside packaging of the Primo. You see the fuselage is surrounded by foam pieces, and many of the other parts are in individual cardboard boxes, or as you can see with the landing gear, taped down. Looks like everything came through the shipping process without any trouble. Let's get this out on the table and see what we've got. Okay, so here are all the parts taken from the various plastic bags and boxes that we just looked at. So first, of course, is the fuselage. It's got the motor, the ESC, the receivers all right here. It's all mounted in. It's kind of nose heavy. I'm sure when we get the tail on, that's going to balance out. We've got here underneath the stand the connection to put the wings together. We've got the wings on either side. Tail feathers here with the horizontal and vertical stabilizers right here. The landing gear support strut. It's a heavy wire and kind of chrome, so that's cool. We got 2 big, giant foam tires and then a small tail wheel, a pair of propellers. Here are some of the loose items and glue that I've just left in the bag. And then because this is a ready-to-fly version of the model, it comes with a small power block to power the charger, a 2225C Dynam branded LiPo battery. And then over here is the Gavin radio, the 6A, so it's a 6-channel radio. And this is a 5-channel model because it does, as you see here, have flaps. So that's the parts, and so it's really not going to take too long to put together. I'm going to talk a little bit about using the Gavin radio with the simulator, so I asked him to throw in the simulator card connector. And so this is laying here. That's purchased separately. It's about $7. So we'll talk about that as the review unfolds. So that's the pieces and the parts. Now, there's only about a dozen steps in the instructions to put this together. And the one thing they don't talk about is putting on the stickers. And because the stickers can get to be kind of a pain to put on after it's assembled, I'm going to take the next few minutes and put all of the Dynam stickers on right away before I do the assembly. So that's the next step. Now the Dynam decals on this airplane are really bright and colorful, and so my intent is to use them. They make the airplane look really nice. One of the things that is cool about this particular airplane, it comes all white, and so if you wanted to paint it, you could. But with this colorful decal set, I think that's going to work just fine. Now, the way I like to deal with these Dynam decals is to cut pretty close to the decal, and you can see where they're marked on the large page that comes with the decal. And then what I like to do is to just kind of peel it back just a little bit here with the mounting paper away from it. So you can see I peeled it up, and then I'm going to reach here and get a scissors and cut off a little bit. So I've got about a half to 3/4 of an inch of the decal that's got the sticky exposed, and then at the same time the rest of it is all down. And so in this particular case, the decal shows that it goes just about at the top of this little mounting bracket, and it just touches where the hinge line is at this end. So I'm going to lay it down with the paper, and I've got it down right there, and I'm going to push the sticky side down. So I've got that nice and tight. And then all I need to do is use my finger and just kind of walk it back, fold this backing paper up as I go, and that way I've got the sticky stuff covered the entire time, and so I really reduce the risk of having the decal fold back on itself, stick together, and then basically ruin the decal. So just kind of work it there with my finger, bring it forward, and then now I've got it down there nice and tight, and it looks good. Okay, so now I've got all of the decals on the model. It took about 45 minutes to do that, just carefully getting them matched up so that they look pretty good. You can see here on the wing, I've got this, the decal on, and all of the ones on the fuselage and all the rest. I really like Dynam decals, and these were no exception. So they went on easily again, but I was going slow to make sure that I got them on right. Now the next step is to join the wings, so we're going to take a look at that, and then I'm going to alter the steps in the instructions just a little bit. The instructions call for mounting the wings after joining the wings and then moving to the tail. But I find here when I'm filming and even just working in my workshop that getting the tail feathers on is better before you mount the wing because the wing's just so big. So that's what we'll be doing next. Okay, so the next step talks about putting the wings together. And so you see we have the left and right side of the wings. I've got the wires unraveled here, so I see they're out of the way. And so the wings mount on this really handy little spar with this connection plate in between it. And so what we need to do first is take a look at the edges of the wing and see what directions the little angles are down here. And so I've got this set up properly. And so I'm just going to slide this into the wing, set the edges in there, and then just push it in. Nothing more difficult than that. On the other side, and do the same thing. Make sure the wires are out of the way. Push this into the foam. Angles are good. And then just apply some pressure on the ends, and put the two wings together. Now, when you look into these holes, you can see that the holes in that plate are lined up. And so at that point, we're just going to take this large plastic piece and place it in there. Get it the right way so the angle works. And then it mounts flush against the wing. And then when it comes time to mount onto the fuselage, we're just going to use these nylon wing bolts, drop them in, and screw it on. And so you'll see that later. So the first thing we're going to do to get ready to mount the tail feathers on the fuselage is to put the control horn here on the elevator. And so to do that, I'm going to start with just a little bit of glue. I'm just going to put a dab of glue right between the holes that are already molded here in the foam for it. And then a little bit at the bottom of this plastic control horn, just a little bit of it, okay? And then I'm going to smush it all together. And then I'm going to pull it apart. You notice there, you may be able to see some little strings of glue. I call it little glue hairs. And that's good because this is contact cement. The Dynam glue is pretty good. I've got some airplanes that I've had for 8 or 9 years that are Dynam planes that I've glued together and the glue holds firm. People who complain about the glue generally don't use it right. And so this is contact cement. So you put some here, put some here. We're going to wait for about half a minute or so to get ready, get that glue a chance to start to dry. And then we're going to stick it down and it'll stay. Now we've got another piece to put on the top. And so while this is drying, I'm going to do the same thing with this other piece. So I've got a little bit of glue that I'm going to put here. Just a very little thin coating. I'm going to match the holes so I get the right side up so I don't have the holes backwards for where I'm going to end up putting them. That's right. Then I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the bottom of this. I'm going to smush them together. Then I'm going to pick it up off the plastic and I'm going to let that dry too. Now while that's drying, this other side is dried, so I'm going to take the control horn. I'm going to put it so the connection part here is over the hinge, and I'm just going to set it on, and it is stuck. So again, there's not a lot of figuring it out, but by giving it a chance to dry, that's what makes contact cement work, and this Dynam glue is contact cement. So this has had a chance to dry now, so we're going to do the same thing over here. We're just going to mount it right there on that point. And then, using the screwdriver that came with the kit, we're going to drop these screws through the holes. And they should match up on the receiver side on the other side. I can feel it down there. Coming through the hole, it's grabbed. I'm going to put that in there. Got to be careful with these since we're just screwing into plastic, and these were pretty finely threaded screws, so we don't want to strip the plastic. Now we've got that on there. You can see them poking out through the top, and so we're in a good place as we move then to mount several pieces to the back of the fuselage. So the tail feathers just kind of fit into areas of molded recesses. So this comes together really pretty easy. Just kind of slid in from the back there. And then this piece, you notice it's got a bit of a down angle, goes into a receptacle right here. And so we're just going to kind of push that down in there as well. So we've got to get it past the trailing edge here, and then we're just going to push it in. Now there are two little nubs on this plastic piece that fit into the sockets on the horizontal stabilizer, and so we're just going to work to get those lined up. And that's really all there is to that. Everything is all lined up. We've got this on. Now we're just going to flip over the fuselage and work on a couple of pieces on the underside. So on the underside, we've got this large plastic piece, and it's basically the tail wheel assembly. You can see it's got some cross plastic pieces, and then it's got these long plastic sleeves for the screw that screws this all together to go in, along with the wire for the tail wheel itself. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to put this in the holes and slide it down. And we're going to watch where this wire goes as we push in so that we can get it into the rudder. And then we have got this plastic piece right here where my finger is, where we're going to screw this all together. So let me put this on sideways so I can get a better view of what I'm screwing. Okay, so I've got the first screw in on that little plastic piece so it'll stay steady for me. But what I'm using are these little pointed screws here. And so we're going to just drop them into the holes, and we're going to screw through, and then they're going to end up mounting in the little plastic piece that is on the other side. So it kind of makes a little rudder sandwich. So we're looking good here on the tail. Just one quick thing left to do, and that is to mount the clevis to the various control horns. And so I'm going to mount these on the end. Seems to line up pretty well to the end. And then just snap it together. When I get the final trim done on this, I'm going to circle back and put a little 4-inch cable tie around this. You can use fuel tubing and slide it up over, or you can just wrap it with a cable tie and snip off the extra edge. But you want to use a little support to hold these clevises closed. So with the clevises connected, I'm just going to drop these long, I think they're like 25 millimeter length screws. I think that's what the instructions labeled these, down into the hole. And we're going to use the screwdriver that came with the kit and just screw them in to the socket there in the rudder. Okay, so we've got those tied in there. And basically, again, notice I'm not using any glue. So the main landing gear support is bright chrome. It's fairly heavy metal. It just kind of fits right in there. And then you'll see that there's a big piece of plastic that's got some little hooks on it. And that's going to go right in here, and it's going to capture the supports of the landing gear strut, just like that. Now, the other thing you'll notice in the bag is just a whole bunch of these little screws. There's 8 of them, and there just happens to be 8 holes. And so what I'm going to do now then is just place these screws in the holes and screw them in. So I've got 7 of these in, just putting in the last one. Screwing it in, getting it nice and tight. Kind of did this like you do a tire on your car, going back and forth in a back and forth pattern so I can get the screws in without causing the plastic to warp. And they all lined up. They went in really well. And so the next step is mounting the tires. Okay, to mount the tires, the landing gear struts came with these little wheel collets, and I've taken them off using an Allen wrench that came with the kit, so that's handy to have that. And now it's just a matter of sliding the tire on. Got these big Tundra style tires that are real popular nowadays. And the next thing I'm going to do, it's optional, but I like to do it with these little grub screws. Get that down in the picture for you to see. Is I'm using a little medium strength of the blue colored thread locker. Just put it on the threads so that when I get the thing on the wheel on here and get it all tightened up, I can be confident that the wheel collet is going to stay on. So with the tail done, now is a good time to deal with the wing. It's just easier to do, as I mentioned before. And so on the wing itself, when you undo the wires that come from each side, the good news is that you've got one with a long lead and one with a short lead, and so you can tell them apart. And on this one, the aileron is the one with the long lead and the flap with the short lead, since they're not labeled. So what I'm going to do now then is I mounted one of the Y cords into channel 6 or aux 1 on the receiver that's in the airplane and labeled it with a little China marker as flaps. And then there was one mounted already in the aileron channel, and that doesn't have any labels, so I know what that one is. And so I'll just put the wing on top and make the plugs. And now, as a newbie, the thing to keep in mind is that the cables have to match in terms of the brown, the red, and the orange. And so when you put these things together, you want to make sure you've got ailerons to ailerons, and then you've got the colors matching so that the positive, the signal, and the ground are all the same. Otherwise, the servo is not going to work. Okay, so the last thing we have to do is we need to put the wing in. And we need to make sure we get all the wires in there. You can just kind of stick them in there. And then we're going to push forward to make sure that little star-shaped piece of plastic fits here in these little sockets. And push down. And then hopefully our holes line up here on the back side. Got them in there nice and snug. Put them in there and see if we can get them to screw in and tight. Okay, looking good. Now we've got the wing attached in there. Now, to be honest with you, there was a little too much foam around this front edge. And so the little star pieces that mount the front end to keep it nice and tight wouldn't quite engage. And these holes were just a little off in the back. So I just took a hobby knife and trimmed a little of that foam right here so that I was able to bring it forward. So if that happens to you, you'll know what the story is. And when I'm talking about cutting some foam, I'm talking like maybe 2 millimeters. So it was a very, very tiny amount, but it was just enough not to allow the screws to go in the back. So all in all, it's looking good. The only thing I've got left is to put on the propeller, and I'm not going to do that until I've got all of the servos centered and all the radio work done so that I don't end up accidentally hurting myself with the spinning propeller. So now it's time to read up on the radio and make sure we've got everything working the way it's supposed to. In part 2 of this video review, we'll set up the radio, fly the model, and chat briefly about using the Gavin 6A radio as a flight sim controller.